shin guards.
Well, nice. I do like the tweed. Right, folks, welcome to the Society Cafe in Bath. And me and Tom Last are here to present GCN's wrap-up of the recent World Championships held in Florence, or Firenze, in Tuscany. And what a world it was, Tom.
Yeah,
Let's kick off with the men's road race.
Yeah, what a fantastic race. I mean, yeah, no one really expected Rui Costa to take the win. He was definitely down to be up there. I don't know what you thought, Matt. But
He certainly wasn't one of my tips, and I think, looking back, he wasn't on as many people's radar as you'd have thought, but, he's a double Tour of Switzerland winner, and obviously picked up 2 stages in a difficult stage of the Tour de France this year, but he wasn't one of the main favourites, but what a tactically, fantastic ride he carried out on the day.
yeah, I'm not sure whether Costa's ride was tactically fantastic or the Spanish were tactically awful. It seemed that it was very easy for him to take advantage of.
Yeah, I think the first thing to talk about that race was the Italians, though. I mean, they set out with Paolo Bettini at the helm as the national coach, and they stated very, very early doors they were going to smash it to bits, and they did. Because talk a little bit about the Great Britain team, just didn't perform anywhere near the kind of expectancies. But again, the pressure applied at the front by the whole of the Italian team was impressive, and they decimated the field early on. But of course, as you said, going into the finale when the race is really broken down, I mean, it was between obviously Nibali and obviously the two Spaniards and Costa, and I think it was at that point, when Spain had the upper hand tactically. Costa just rode on the coattails, but really, I think the race was lost by the Spaniards, and I know the Spaniard national coach was fuming at the finish, I believe.
Yeah, and obviously Rodriguez couldn't quite contain his own disappointment. It was.
I don't think the thing for me that summed it up was the face-off in the finale. It was like a boxing match, wasn't it? Where that look, into each other's eyes with 300 metres to go kind of said it all. But really, Valverde should have shut that down. As soon as Rui Costa went across to J-Rod, as I like to call him, he should have shut him straight down. He didn't, he hesitated. I know Valverde has said he'd had bad legs, but bad legs or not, the road was flat. The race was lost at that particular juncture, I think.
Yeah, if it had come back together, they still would have had a majority, and they still would have had the best sprinter in the group.
What a fantastic race. What a crash for Rigoberto Urán on the last lap on the descent. I mean, that was a really sketchy descent, and he just overcooked it massively.
We know he's a very good descender, but you can only descend so well in those conditions. And
it was that kind of halfway house. The roads were starting to dry, but there's still patches of wet, and that, as as a rider, that's the worst sort of conditions.
Yeah.
When it's been pouring down for ages, what lines to take, but he just pushed it a bit too much. You could see him the last moment try and correct his bike before he wiped out big time. It's like something out of NASCAR, I thought. It was just amazing. But luckily, he was apart from losing some skin and knackering his bike, he was relatively unscathed. Yeah. Simon Clark in 7th place, that was an absolutely tremendous ride, wasn't it? Riding out of his skin to put away Sagan in the sprint at the end, didn't he?
I think it was only Sagan who beat him, so he put away Gilbert and Cancellara in the sprint.
That's no mean feat. I mean, I know he was extremely pleased with that ride all over Twitter, and not one that we certainly expect to see in the top 10, although he is a solid rider for Orica. I mean, while we're talking about Orica, we might as well flip back and talk about the men's the team time trial. What a close finish that was.
Definitely.
0.81 of a second. I mean, that's just cruel, isn't it? Obviously taken by Liga Farm Quickstep.
Yeah, unbelievable. But they obviously Orica had overturned their deficit at the final time check they had at the second or a couple of seconds, and then Omega Pharma were really having to push it. You saw Chavanel dropping the team on every corner because he was going that hard to get back in.
And then down the pecking order, I mean, I think an interesting comparison is to compare Lululemon's performance in the women's team time trial, which would have placed them on average speed ahead of AG2R. What do you think of that?
It's impressive. It would have placed them 19th, so I think they would have been ahead of nearly every continental team, if not all the continental teams, and ahead of the Pro Tour team. And obviously the men's race was 15 kilometres longer and had a climb earlier on in the course, but it wasn't a significant climb. And it's a pretty phenomenal effort.
I think that just shows where women's cycling is, and it's constantly on the ascendancy, isn't it?
And it also highlights that the importance of teamwork in practice, because obviously the women have the Open Suede Vargada in their World Cup, so they get, which is a team time trial as well as a road race, so they actually get opportunities to practice it outside, whereas traditionally people would hold that French teams like AG2R and maybe FDJ and people like that don't have an overly technological approach and things like that. Obviously that has to be changing now, but it shows that actually Lululemon, who are an American English speaking women's Pro Tour team, are actually perhaps ahead of some of the men's teams in terms of their setup and approach.
Sure. Then obviously flicking over onto the individual time trial, Tony Martin. What a devastatingly powerful performance from the German to win another world title.
Unbelievable. I mean, we actually saw him spinning out 58.11 at points. Which
was that the gear he was riding?
Yeah.
I wasn't too sure what it was. 58.11. That's a big gear, folks. That is massive.
Yeah, seriously impressive. Obviously, he was streets ahead of Wiggins and Cancellara, and then Wiggins and Cancellara were close, but it's difficult to see past anyone beating Tony Martin for a few years, like Chris Froome in the Tour.
Yeah.
You know, potential challengers all look to be a couple of steps behind him when it comes to the big day.
Interestingly, where would that ride from Tony Martin put him in the team time trial? Because there is an amazing stat there, isn't there?
Yeah, I think one of our YouTube commenters actually said that it would place him 6th in the elite men's team time trial, which is not bad. And they rode a very similar distance to the trade team time trial, but there was a slight difference in the course. But
it was only by a couple of hundred metres, wasn't it?
It was minuscule. It was fairly insignificant. The course profile was still very similar, but yeah, incredible.
That just shows what an important figure he is in that team going forward. So you can't really see him being beat in the next few years anyways. And possibly he's so young still, the best is yet to come quite possibly as well.
Right, so we've mentioned that the winners of the women's trade team time trial, Specialized-lululemon, were actually faster than World Tour team AG Desert and all the continental teams that were invited to the men's race. But in second place we had the Rabobank women's team, and in third Orica AIS. So there was 2 medals for the Orica teams at the trade team time trial. Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, 2 second places, not bad at all. And looking back in the other races of significance, the under-23 men's road race was that was an interesting finale, wasn't it? Old Mathieu of Slovenia winning on his own.
Yeah, I mean it's always a fascinating race, because one of the great things about the under-23 race is you always get a lot of guys from nations that you may never even have heard of in some cases that really come to the fore. So in the early break there were even guys, you know, there was an Israeli, then there was a Romanian, but also there was an Eritrean who was Meron Teshon, who was really to the fore.
Superb ride. He was really riding. I mean, it just got detached from the leaders with 2 laps to go, and I think the teammate did finish in the top 20. But I think rounding out in second place was Lewis Minches from South Africa, but he's a pro, isn't he? He rides for MTM Quebec, so he's going to have a pretty good race programme. Maybe a point of contention for some people. Should, you know, the under-23 pros who are running elite still ride the under-23 championships, but nonetheless, very significant medal for South Africa, the silver medal.
It's almost the whole race perhaps signifies the emergence or growing presence of African cycling, because
definitely.
Obviously, if we rewind to the Tour of Turkey, now we have an Eritrean winner there, Bahrain, I think, on that Europe car, and then moving forward, we've got 2 of the significant players, or 2 of the guys who made a significant impact in the under-23 men's race were both African, and are both coming through the MTN Quebec and UCI World Cycling Centre schemes.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time, isn't it, for the more developing nations in terms of cycling, definitely. But I think another interesting point with the Slovenian winner, he's 18 years of age, he's signed for Cannondale for next year. And what about that style of the descent, sitting on the top tube and pedalling? I mean, kids, don't try that at home, for God's sake.
Not if you want kids.
No, definitely not. But yeah, pretty effective and a stunning win, and definitely one guy to watch for the future.
Yeah.
Junior men's road race.
Mathieu van der Poel this was his 3rd junior world title. So previously, the last 2 years, he's been world cyclocross champion, and there have been occasions in the cyclocross where van der Poel, and this is incredibly rare, has ridden faster on the course than the elite men. Obviously, maybe you add take a few seconds off the elite men's time if they've ridden at the same time as van der Poel, but clearly this is an incredibly strong guy who will be, like Mohoric, going straight through to the elites and challenging very, very strongly. So who was his grandfather?
I can't remember. Who was it?
It was Raymond Poulador. So the eternal second.
Yeah, so that's not bad.
To Jacques Anquetil. So he's, you know, genetically like Taylor Phinney, with Taylor Phinney's parents, Connie Carpenter and Davis Phinney. And we think Van der Poel's probably got it.
And rounding out the podium was Mads Pedersen from Denmark, and another significant country, first ever medal in cycling, Mikael Iljian from Albania. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, Albania, one of the only countries in Europe that still don't have a national lottery. That kind of puts it in perspective. But no, an absolutely wonderful performance from him. And just to see his face as he crossed the line in his swan year, they were absolutely overjoyed. I think he might as well have won it, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, certainly, you know, one for the history books there for Albania. Especially
interesting if you actually consider that a lot of the cycling teams are actually funded by lotteries across the other nations. So the huge British junior programmes and under-23 programmes wouldn't be possible without national lottery funding. Obviously, you have Lotto Belisol, who have their string of teams throughout the ranks as well. So It's actually a not insignificant cycling fact, Matt. I thought it was going to be, but
no, not at all.
We can tenuously link it.
Well, Albania, one of the poorest countries, in Europe as well.
Yeah. Obviously, Marianne Vos's Palmares is one of the most impressive in cycling ever. She has won the gold medal in the points race in Beijing. She took gold at the London Olympic Road Race. She has never been lower than second since 2006 in the women's road race. She's won 3 of those titles, so it's phenomenal. And also the breadth of her wins. She's also won 6 cyclocross world titles. So
I think
one of the most impressive performers of all time.
I think what makes it even more important and even more worrying for professional ladies mountain biking is she, at the start of this year, she primarily trained on a mountain bike, and she's looking at doubling up next year and going into MTB World Cups, and she felt that she did have the condition at the start of this year to actually compete, but focused on the road. So going forward, I think she's only 26, 27 years of age. So I believe we're going to see her on the mountain bike stage as well, which could be an extremely interesting few years for women's cycling.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see her towards the top of the podium, if not at the top.
Definitely.
The Dutch took another women's title in the elite time trial when Ellen van Dijk, who'd been expected to win, dominated the race. She was followed by Linda Willemsen of New Zealand and Carmen Small of the US. And
yeah, she just beat her teammate Stevens by 0.04 of a second to scoop the bronze medal, so I don't think they'll be rooming together very often in the future.
Junior races are always unpredictable, so quite predictably, I hadn't actually heard of any of the winners beforehand, but here we go. Igor de Crane of Belgium won the junior men's time trial, and he's actually a first-year junior, so perhaps like Moritz, we'll actually see him moving through the ranks and being incredibly dominant. The women's time trial was won by Séverine Hérault of France, and she won it from 2 Australians, Alexandria Nichols and Alexandra Manley. And the junior women's time trial was an incredibly close run thing. It was actually the top 30 in the race was separated by just 1 minute, which is pretty phenomenal, really.
And again, another indicator of how bright women's cycling is going forward, and all these youngsters coming through. Competition clearly very, very tight there. Again, things are definitely looking rosy, aren't they?
Australia's only gold of the championships came in the under-23 men's time trial, where Damien Howson took the victory. He was a clear favourite, and he signed for Orica Green Edge next year. Right. So, almost certainly one to watch for the future. Another incredibly strong Australian rider, but one that they say might even be very good for the Grand Tours. So, he was followed by Frenchman Johan Pavé, who rides for VC La Pomme of Marseille, and also in third place was Lassie Norman Hansen of Denmark, who took the gold medal in the Omnium at London last year.
Yeah, so overall, Tom, an absolutely fascinating World Championships and some very, very worthy winners of those prestigious rainbow stripes. And of course, if you've got any comments on what you saw over the last week down in Tuscany, or anything, of course, that me and Tom have recently just talked about, leave your comments down below. Down below. Thanks for watching.
You're not meant to wear socks with locals, are you?
Not apparently, no.
No.
It's not even got those tiny little socks in there, is it? He's just going all the way. All those feet are going to smell. It's just style, isn't it?
Switzerland's Fabian Cancellara was next off, and he set a blistering pace for the opening kilometres. Faster than everyone at the first time check, it was looking like the 4-time champion might regain his time trial crown.